What if I told you that two brand new airplanes fell out of the sky because of a single, tiny, hidden software flaw? This isn't a movie plot. It's the tragic, true story of the Boeing 737 MAX. It all started with an update. To compete with their rival Airbus, Boeing rushed to create a more fuel-efficient version of their classic 737. They fitted it with bigger engines. But this changed the plane's aerodynamics, making it prone to pitching its nose up. Instead of a major redesign, Boeing opted for a software fix called MCAS. This system would automatically push the plane's nose down if it sensed a stall. Here's the critical problem. MCAS relied on a single, vulnerable sensor. And unbelievably, pilots weren't even told about it. They were told the new MAX flew just like the old 737s, saving millions on retraining. Then, on October 29, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off. A faulty sensor triggered MCAS. The pilots, unaware of the system fighting them, struggled for control as the plane repeatedly nosedived. Just 12 minutes after takeoff, it crashed into the Java Sea, killing all 189 people on board. Boeing and the FAA initially pointed to pilot error, suggesting more training was needed, but less than 5 months later, it happened again. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed just 6 minutes after takeoff, under terrifyingly similar circumstances. This time, 157 lives were lost. Only then was the truth undeniable. A series of small, seemingly insignificant decisions, a software shortcut, inadequate training, a lack of transparency cascaded into a global tragedy. The entire 737 MAX fleet was grounded worldwide. This story is a powerful reminder that in high-stakes engineering, there are no small details. Every decision matters. Thanks for watching. If you found this story important, please like and subscribe for more deep dives. Every major crisis begins long before the first visible failure. It starts in quiet rooms, surrounded by rising charts, tight deadlines, and decisions that seem too small to challenge. The origin of the 737 MAX fits this pattern perfectly. Boeing found itself cornered by an aggressive market, demanding customers, and a competitor moving fast. Urgency filled the air. And urgency has a way of pushing organizations toward an emotional decision disguised as strategy. Designing a brand new aircraft would take time, money, and patience. None of those felt acceptable. So a solution emerged that sounded logical. Adapt what already existed. On paper, it looked like a rational decision. In reality, it was a poor choice that ignored physical and human limits. When speed dictates the rhythm, analysis loses depth, and a wrong decision begins to take shape. There was no tragedy yet, but the burden of conscience was already being built, layered by layer. The problem wasn't only technical, it was psychological and cultural. The fear of losing market share turned risk into something tolerable, almost routine. Each decision seemed defensible on its own, but together they formed a dangerous path. That's how bad decisions accumulate without triggering alarms. One emotional decision justified the next. One poor choice, sold as efficiency, silenced internal doubts. The narrative was innovation, but the real driver was cost control and speed to market. There was a lack of understanding that pushing an old design too far always comes at a price. The same pattern appears in everyday life. Fixing structural problems with cosmetic solutions, or making big commitments while hoping issues will somehow resolve themselves. At first, everything seems fine, then regret arrives when simple fixes are no longer possible. As the project advanced, confidence replaced caution. Questioning meant delays, and delays were treated as failure. The environment began to reward speed, not scrutiny. The result was a product carrying the marks of a poor choice, even while being celebrated as an engineering success. The lesson is painfully applicable. Important decisions require pauses, even when the world demands urgency. Books like Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman help explain how humans confuse speed with intelligence and emotion with logic. A truly rational decision is often uncomfortable in the short term. When it's avoided, the burden of conscience doesn't vanish. It just waits. And that's where the story moves next. Because sustaining a fragile structural choice requires new decisions. Some invisible, some dangerous. Ever wonder how a small software patch can lead to a global crisis? Let's talk about MCAs. The system at the heart of the Boeing 737 MAX story. When a structural problem isn't faced head-on, it's often band-aided with a quiet fix. That's exactly how MCAs came to be. It wasn't meant to be a star feature. It was a background adjustment to make the new plane feel like the old one. Instead of a costly redesign, software was used to automatically correct the plane's flight behavior. On the surface, this seemed like a rational decision, but underneath, it was an emotional one, driven by tight deadlines and the desire to avoid expensive retraining for pilots. The system was intentionally designed to be invisible, to not draw any attention, and that silence, that lack of transparency, was its greatest risk. Using an invisible system to correct a fundamental design choice is almost always a poor decision. When you hide the truth, the burden of conscience starts to build. MCAs operated in the background, making powerful adjustments that pilots weren't even fully aware of. See, automation is fantastic when it's predictable and understood, but when it operates in secret, it just creates confusion. Expecting pilots to instantly diagnose and react to a system they were never properly trained on revealed a deep conflict within the company. Logic demanded transparency, training, and redundancy. Emotion, however, pushed for speed and minimal disruption. The result was a catastrophic choice with devastating consequences. The system itself wasn't evil, but the belief that it could substitute for honest communication and thorough training was a profoundly wrong decision. This pattern isn't just in aviation. We see it everywhere. Companies roll out complex new tools without training their teams. We all trust automated systems we don't fully understand. Everything seems to work perfectly, right up until the moment it doesn't. The real mistake wasn't creating MCAs. The mistake was believing a piece of code could quietly cover up a deeper, more significant problem. And whenever we let automation replace genuine understanding, regret is the only possible outcome. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives. Technology doesn't fail on its own. It fails when it meets human limits that were ignored. Pilot training was treated as an operational detail, not a safety cornerstone. The promise was minimal additional training. Commercially, it sounded like a rational decision. In reality, it was an emotional decision driven by sales pressure. The human brain has limits, especially under stress. Ignoring that is a poor choice. Cognitive overload turns seconds into chaos. The burden of conscience begins when perfection is demanded without preparation. Many pilots didn't fully understand systems that directly affected flight control. Expecting flawless reactions to unknown systems is a wrong decision. It's like driving a high-tech car without knowing how to disable its systems. The rational decision would have been deep simulator training. Emotion chose speed. Regret came later. This happens everywhere. People accept responsibilities without preparation and hope for the best. Recognizing limits is a rational decision. Ignoring them builds risk. When overload becomes normal, culture starts to rot. When questionable decisions repeat without immediate consequences, they stop looking wrong. That's normalization of deviance. The MAX crisis wasn't one failure, but many poor choices tolerated as acceptable. Speed was rewarded. Questioning was discouraged. The emotional decision to protect timelines overtook the rational decision to pause. The burden of conscience accumulated silently. Soon, exceptions became rules. Reduced testing, incomplete reports. Each poor choice enabled the next. The rationale decision would have been to stop early. Emotion said keep going. Regret only arrived when damage was undeniable. This exists beyond aviation. Burnout cultures, ignored warnings, postponed health issues. When deviation becomes habit, collapse becomes likely. Why do we have oversight? It's simple. To hit the brakes when speed becomes a danger. But with the Boeing 737 MAX, that critical safeguard slowly crumbled. The certification process, which should be a solid wall between corporate goals and public safety, started to merge with the very company it was supposed to regulate. Huge parts of the safety evaluation were handed back to Boeing's own engineers, all in the name of efficiency. On paper, this looked like a rational decision, but in reality, it was an emotional one, driven by political pressure, money, and a deep-seated trust that had been built over decades. As this line between regulator and manufacturer blurred, some really critical assumptions were never questioned. The perceived risk of new systems was downgraded, which meant less pilot training was required and less information was shared. These weren't simple mistakes. They were deliberate compromises, each one a poor choice justified by tight deadlines and the need to keep things moving. Slowly but surely, the regulators started accepting assurances instead of demanding proof. Trust replaced healthy skepticism, and when that happens, a wrong decision can sail right through the system with an official stamp of approval. This is a classic case of what's known as regulatory capture. From the inside, it doesn't feel sinister. It feels like teamwork. Everyone knows each other, and that familiarity makes it hard to sound the alarm. The truly rational decision would have been to strengthen independence, especially when red flags started popping up, but the emotional decision to keep the peace and maintain momentum won out. The burden of conscience wasn't felt in the moment. It only arrived later, when the tragic consequences could no longer be hidden in spreadsheets and reports. This pattern isn't unique to aviation. We see it everywhere. Audits become mere formalities. Reviews turn into rubber stamping exercises. Any question that might slow things down is quietly pushed aside. When oversight is just a formality, our most important systems become fragile. The story of the 737 MAX isn't just a failure of software or engineering. It's a profound failure of institutional courage. And when that courage disappears, the cost of rebuilding public trust is immeasurable. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing. When the crashes occurred, the crisis instantly became global. Airlines across continents faced uncertainty. Regulators issued conflicting statements. Passengers questioned the safety of modern aviation itself. Yet even grounding the aircraft was not immediate. The hesitation revealed how deeply emotional decisions were embedded in crisis response. Grounding meant acknowledging a systemic failure. It meant admitting that earlier assurances were wrong. From a safety standpoint, the rational decision was clear. From a corporate and political standpoint, it was deeply uncomfortable. As they spaced, pressure mounted. Some countries grounded the aircraft before others, exposing fractures in global coordination. Each delay amplified the burden of conscience. As the world watched, institutions struggled to act decisively. When the grounding finally became universal, the visual impact was striking. Rows of parked aircraft, silent reminders of how far-reaching a poor choice can be. Financial losses were staggering, but they were eclipsed by the human cost. Families sought answers, not explanations crafted for press releases. The regret that followed wasn't just corporate, it was societal. Trust in aviation, long built on an image of rigor and redundancy, had been shaken, and once public confidence erodes, restoring it requires far more than technical fixes. The grounding marked a turning point, but it also raised an unsettling question. If such a failure could unfold in one of the most regulated industries on Earth, where else might similar patterns be hiding? With the aircraft grounded, scrutiny intensified. Investigations multiplied across agencies and countries. Internal emails, design memos, and meeting notes painted a picture of sustained pressure and internal conflict. What emerged was not a single villain, but a system optimized for speed and cost control. Accountability became the central issue. Who made the wrong decision? Who approved the poor choice? And who benefited from delaying the rational decision? Legal proceedings transformed abstract responsibility into concrete consequences. Lawsuits forced disclosures that public statements never had. Financial settlements acknowledged harm, but they could not erase the burden of conscience. For many observers, the most troubling aspect was how responsibility fragmented. Technical teams pointed upward, leadership pointed downward. This diffusion itself was an emotional decision, driven by self-preservation. True accountability is not measured by penalties alone. It is measured by structural change. Without it, regret becomes performative rather than transformative. The aviation industry faced a choice: treat the crisis as an anomaly, or confront it as a systemic warning. History shows that industries often choose the former, until repetition makes denial impossible. The path back to service was slow and deliberate, at least on the surface. Software was redundancies were added. Training requirements were revised. Each change was framed as evidence of a renewed commitment to safety. Technically, many issues were addressed. Culturally, questions remained. Fixing a system does not automatically fix the mindset that created it. Airlines face difficult trade-offs. Keeping planes grounded strained finances. Returning them to service risked public backlash. Here again, the tension between emotional decision and rational decision became visible. Some operators exceeded minimum requirements, investing heavily in training and transparency. Others did the minimum necessary to resume operations. The difference between those approaches revealed whether regret had produced genuine learning or mere compliance. Passengers, meanwhile, carried their own doubts. Safety is not only technical, it is psychological. Once trust is broken, every noise feels louder, every anomaly more suspicious. Reputation, once lost through a wrong decision, cannot be restored by marketing alone. It requires consistency over time. The return to service was not an ending. It was an uneasy continuation, shadowed by the knowledge that systems corrected under pressure must still prove themselves under normal conditions. When we think of the Boeing 737 MAX, we remember the tragedies of 2018 and 2019. It felt like a crisis that had been addressed, a lesson learned. But then, January 2024 happened. A door plug blew out of a plane mid-flight, and suddenly, the nightmare was back. This time, it wasn't a complex software issue. It was missing bolts, incomplete paperwork, basic, fundamental errors. This simple failure was almost more terrifying because it showed that even after disaster, poor choices can continue. Investigations pointed to breakdowns in manufacturing and quality control. These weren't new or unknown risks. They were tolerated risks. The emotional desire to believe everything was under control had replaced the rational need to check, double-check, and triple-check. The weight of responsibility, the burden of conscience, came rushing back. Heavier this time because we thought we had already learned our lesson. This incident proves a critical truth. Safety isn't something you achieve once, it's a constant process. It degrades the moment you stop paying attention. Believing that a past fix is a permanent solution is one of the most dangerous mistakes you can make. Looking back, the entire 737 MAX story is about accumulation. It wasn't one single bad decision that led to catastrophe. It was a long chain of them. Each poor choice chipped away at the margin of safety. Each emotional decision to avoid a difficult conversation or delay a costly fix made the system more fragile. Over time, the entire structure's ability to withstand a shock eroded completely. This is the scary thing about systemic failure. It often hides in plain sight. People can make what seem like reasonable choices in their own little bubbles, but when combined, those choices can lead to disaster. Good intentions don't fix a broken system. The regret only becomes overwhelming when the pattern is too obvious to ignore. The lessons here go far beyond aviation. In our jobs, our governments, even our personal lives, we build systems through repeated decisions. When we prioritize speed over thoroughness and discourage questions, we are building fragility. The story of the 737 MAX isn't just about airplanes. It's a powerful reminder of how small, compounding decisions shape our destiny, long before the consequences become clear. Thanks for watching. Have you ever heard of the concept of the point of no return? In aviation, it's that critical moment in a flight when a plane no longer has enough fuel to return to its starting airport. Once you cross that line, there's only one direction: forward. The decision to cross that point is monumental. It's calculated, precise, and based on hard data. But what about the point of no return in our own lives? This isn't really a story about airplanes. It's a story about decisions. More specifically, it's about the small, seemingly insignificant choices we make every day that slowly, silently, push us toward our own points of no return. Think about it. Wrong decisions rarely feel wrong in the moment, do they? They feel small, justifiable. We tell ourselves, it's just this once, or I'll deal with it tomorrow. Every poor choice comes wrapped in a convenient excuse. It's the little voice that says, I'm too tired, I don't have time, or what's the harm? These aren't logical reasons. They're emotional get-out-of-jail-free cards. And then there are the emotional decisions, the sneakiest of them all. They masterfully disguise themselves as logic. We convince ourselves that staying in that dead-end job is stable, or holding on to a toxic relationship is loyal. We build elaborate arguments to support what our gut is screaming is wrong. We do this because facing the truth requires a hard, rational decision. And hard decisions are, well, hard. But while we're busy making excuses and dressing up our emotions as logic, something is building in the background. It's the burden of conscience, a quiet, persistent weight that grows heavier with every postponed decision, with every path not taken. It's the nagging feeling that you're flying on fumes, hoping you'll magically find a runway before the engine sputters out. So, I want you to ask yourself, where in your life are you delaying a rational decision right now? What are you avoiding? In what area are you just hoping things work out on their own? Maybe it's a career change, a difficult conversation, or a commitment to your health. Here's a hard truth. Regret rarely comes from the actions we take. It doesn't come from the risks we dare to embrace, or the tough choices we finally make. No, the deepest, most haunting regrets almost always come from avoidance, from the things we didn't do, the words we didn't say, the chances we let fly by because we were too scared, too comfortable, or too good at making excuses. We wait, and we wait, and we wait, until we've crossed the point of no return, and the cost of our indecision becomes irreversible. If this story made you reflect, even for a moment, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What's one small, rational decision you can make today? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Let's keep learning together how to make better decisions before it's too late. Thanks for watching.